Good night, Shabbos, everyone. Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, Shabbos Mevorchim, Parshas Parah, Parshas Shmini. Many reasons to celebrate. We are approaching Pesach. Pesach is about liberation, but the manner and style of the liberation is through Pesach, jumping over, breaking limits. When we talk about breaking limits, sometimes we get a little worried. Breaking limits, there's a stop sign, you got to stop. There's a red light, you got to stop. You don't, you get a ticket. Who says you have to break limits? Limits are good things. So Hasidus explains this, and I want to, again, since this is a program of history, talk a little bit about Gedolei Yisrael who broke limits. And they weren't necessarily Hasidim. In fact, they were Litvishe. So let's talk about Reb Chaim Kinevsky. Harav HaTzadik, Reb Chaim Kinevsky, Zechei Tzadik Uvrochu, passed away, and he was a person who learned day and night and everything else. We already made a clip about that. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to look at it. So Reb Chaim Kinevsky also broke limits. You know what the limits he broke? The limits is that he gave everyone accessibility to him. How many Gedolei Yisrael, how many Gedolim allowed anyone to come into him, and he spent time with them, and he gave them a bracha, and he heard them. It was all brief, but buha, bracha v'atzlacha, his time was, but he gave you the face-to-face meeting, the smile, the warmth. So Reb Chaim broke limits because previous Litvishe Gedolim, many of them were not that way, They were more protective, and you needed appointments, and they didn't see everyone, etc., etc. Let's talk about Reb Chaim Brisker. Reb Chaim Brisker, was a gentleman named Reb Yaakov Mark. He wrote a book, a sefer called Gedolim von unserer Zeit. It's in Yiddish. It's a must-read. He knew Reb Chaim Brisker, he knew the Rebbe Rashab, Reb Shalom Ber, and he knew Reb Chaim Moshe. He knew them all personally. And he was at different conferences, and he writes. It's a very important work. So I read the section there of Chaim Brisker. He says Reb Chaim has such a warm heart that he allowed people who didn't have what to eat and where to sleep to come to his house, without asking his wife. And some of them ended up sleeping in his bed. He gave them his bed. Now, naturally, his wife didn't go to sleep that night in the bedroom. But just to fathom the idea that Reb Chaim was so selfless. We all know about Reb Chaim. Reb Chaim's Gadlus and Rambam. Reb Chaim, Gavre Chefze. How about the Reb Chaim who was a Baal Midas? And he writes, that's the true Reb Chaim. And it's interesting, his grandson, Reb Yasher Ber Soloveitchik, the Rav, who's safer I have behind me over here, the Rav and the Rebbe, the Rav says on some of his lectures and his tapes, he says, people think Reb Chaim, he says Reb Chaim was a goyin in Midas. That was Reb Chaim. Of course, Reb Chaim in Torah was unbelievable. Mikamoyu, right? Any serious yeshiva bacha today learns Reb Chaim. The derech of Reb Chaim Brisker. And the same was true with Reb Moshe Feinstein, with the Pesach Adoir. What was Reb Moshe? Just a Pesach, a great Pesach, the greatest Pesach. Reb Moshe was a Baal Midas, a humble person, such a Nava. He could sit and talk to a little boy or a teenager and sit with him at the same table without any fanfare and ooh, how can you sit here? Sit next to Reb Moshe. And I heard that Reb Chaim, there was a zettel in Brisk in the Stiebel over there that whoever needs a place should come to Reb Chaim. Like he was looking for wanderers, wayfarers. He was looking for hachnas zarchim. He was looking for broken people. That's breaking the limits. And so we find throughout the generations that those tzaddikim and those rabbanim and those people who weren't rabbanim and tzaddikim necessarily, but they broke limits in the sense that they put themselves secondary and the other person first. That's the true idea of godless, of greatness. And so we talk about Pesach, and Hashem will sit with families and this and that. Rabbi Isai, before you think about that, think about the Jew on your block who's by himself, who's not married, for whatever reason. How is he going to be Pesach? Where is he going to be? And it's our responsibility to make sure that he's sitting at a Pesach or she's sitting at a Pesach with other Yidden. There's nothing greater than making another Yid happy and freilach and feel part of it. Nothing. And if you don't do that, how can you sit Seder night with your family and your comforts and your nice Seder and your grandchildren, and everyone's asking the Manishtana, and it's so beautiful, and yet there's a Yid that doesn't have a place to go for Pesach because you did not think about him or her. Pesach, break the limits. Leave the comforts of your mind and your heart where it's all about you and I, more I and more I and more I. Talk is easy. Talk is cheap. Talk is gurnisht. Nada. Nothing. We need to act. The Rebbe, who you see behind here, the Rebbe on the screen, you see the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, encouraged us already to prepare for giving Mois Chitim, as it says in Shulchan Aruch, and not just giving a check or a Zelle or a PayPal, which is important, but physically making sure everyone has their needs. Exerting yourself these 30 days as we prepare for Pesach with breaking our limitations. And trust me, when you come to the Seder night and you sit down after so much preparation and you see others that would not be at a Seder, and this includes people who aren't knowledgeable of what a Seder is, and you say, come in for a half an hour, sit with other Jewish people, and you give them some wine and arbakaises and matzahs, and you explain what Pesach is about, you will feel elated. You will feel that you really are experiencing Yetzias Mitzrayim. May Hashem help that each and every one of us look at ourselves and look at ways how we can break the routine of just thinking about ourselves and family and us and us and us. And through this, Hashem will see that we're all thinking about other Yidden. He will bring the Geula Shleima Bekor of Mamish, and then we will celebrate from the sacrifices in Yerushalayim HaKodesh, with Mashiach's arrival in Yerushalayim HaKodesh. Amen v'Amen.